Hey, it's Jeff Hyman, your startup therapist, where we focus on the people part of startups. And my guest today is a prominent venture capitalist in Silicon Valley, Niko Bonatsos. How are you, Niko?
Hi, Jeff. How are you? I'm
I'm
great.
very well. It's good to see you, and we appreciate you taking some time to spend with us. I know you work with 8 or 10 portfolio companies, so I'm sure time is not easy to find. So we appreciate it. I'm going to briefly introduce you, and then today's topic is going to be something very specific. We talk a lot about talent, recruiting, how to find rock stars for startups. But today we're going to take a bit of a twist, which is I know you have a particular passion for first-time entrepreneurs, and I was one, you were one. You know, at some point we all are one first-time entrepreneur, and there's just so many potential pitfalls and mistakes that you can make when it comes to recruiting and talent. So today we'll hopefully help people avoid those. Even if you're not a first-time entrepreneur, stay tuned because I know you'll pick something up from a very experienced VC. So Niko, you are a venture partner at General Catalyst in Silicon Valley. What do you got, $3 billion under management or so?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm guessing that's over 100 companies probably.
You're right.
Perfect.
Spot on.
So you see a lot of stuff. You've been there 5 years. So let's dive right into it. Let's start with your definition of an A player, a rock star, whether it's a CEO or someone that your founder might be hiring. When it comes to startups specifically, what are the DNA that you look for?
Yeah. So somebody who is a learning animal, who may not know a lot about his or her domain today, but 3 years down the road, I would expect that person to be a world-class domain expert because every day, every single decision opportunity, they treat it as a learning opportunity. And these are people who learn very quickly.
How can you tell those people? I know what you're talking about. I've met some of them. How do you know?
You can basically, see and try to analyze how they've made decisions over the previous, 3 to 6 months while they were running their company or while they were building the product, for the company they work for. And you see how curious they are, how smart they are about building their network and sourcing information that is highly relevant to them. These people often are very much in tune with what's happening in the market
Right.
that is going to affect their company. And lastly, these are individuals who want, to build something really significant, and they don't feel anything can stop them along the way. And that's why they feel if they learn, everything,
Right.
it's up to them to mess it up, basically.
How do you balance that? This is a question I get often. How do you balance what you're describing, which is the ability, the need to learn and be flexible and nimble, with an entrepreneur who, by definition, tend to have a vision, right, that they're driving towards.
Right.
Some have been called stubborn, obstinate, whatever. Not necessarily Steve Jobs like, but that kind of thing. How do you reconcile those two?
Yeah. So a few things, one thing you can do, which is always, at times, a humbling one is, to have a great partner who is balancing you and complementing you very nicely. And hopefully this is a person that you trust. And this is the one that can basically provide you with candid feedback and say, hey, Niko, today, you weren't very nice, to these few employees that are working for us.
Right.
Or are you sure, trying to do this? Because you've told me, to ask you whether, you're sure. The other thing you can do is, yes, you can have a strong vision. You need to have strong conviction. But at the same time, it's a very helpful exercise to actually write down the key assumptions and hypotheses of what you have in mind when you're getting started or when you're a few months in it. So that like a month later, you would go back and be like, okay, we did a month's, worth of work. What is still true? Where, did we learn something? And basically, in that way, hold yourself accountable.
I love this term, learning monster. That really encapsulates it, right?
Right.
I hope let's trademark that one, right?
Sure.
So let's talk about recruiting specifically, and you're on the board, an observer, or a board member of many startups. I'm sure you've seen founders make many mistakes when it comes to recruiting and talent. What are some of the more common ones that you see? And then we can get into what they should have done. But what are the 2 or 3 mistakes that you see time after time?
Yeah. So the first one is a lot of founders don't think it's a priority, and as a result, they don't spend any time on it. And especially when this comes from the top, it's not a priority for anybody, and they end up becoming a bottleneck themselves. That's one. Second one is there is a very high sense of urgency for recruiting, especially when the board tells them to recruit more aggressively, or right after they've raised the financing round, and because a lot of the times these are individuals who didn't work for bigger teams or didn't do recruiting for their companies before, they rush into it,
right?
And they go on LinkedIn, for example. They're like, we're looking for a product manager. Great, let's email 100 product managers.
Yeah,
of course. If it's a notable company, or they just raise funding from somebody notable, a bunch of people would apply.
Right.
Some of them would be interested, and if you do this, in a period of 1 to 2 months, you can build out your complete executive team.
Right.
Without having been particularly thoughtful about it.
Got it. So what I hear you saying is 2 biggest mistakes: not spending enough time on it,
yes,
and then rushing through it and kind of going about it in a not a mindful way.
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly.
You see this time after time.
Time after time.
Great. So let's use the rest of our time on these 2 things, because I couldn't agree with you more. Let's start with the first. As an entrepreneur, you're busy, right? You're raising money, you're finding customers, you're doing all these things. How does an entrepreneur figure out, because I know the answer is going to be different for each person and situation, how do I figure out how much of my time to spend on recruiting? And also, what time should I be spending on recruiting when I'm not actively recruiting anybody? Should I still be spending more time on doing that? Is that networking? What does that look like?
Yeah. So it depends on the type of founder that you are. Are you a visionary evangelist? Are you a relationship manager? Are you, a master of execution? It depends who you are and, what your partner is, if you have one. But, my general advice is, for somebody who is on the top, founder, CEO, I would expect that person early on to spend at least 1/3 of his time recruiting.
Did you just repeat that number?
1/3 of
1/3 of their time recruiting.
Yeah, because when you're getting started, you obviously have to do pretty much everything by yourself, and then you hire your co-founder, you hire a couple of other people who start owning a few areas. But as you get to have more momentum, processes break down. What worked 1 month ago, doesn't mean it's gonna work a month forward, especially if your customer base or your user traction is trending towards the right direction. So what's really tricky is to basically realize what is high quality and productive work for you.
Because so if I have, just so I'm clear, Niko, if I have 5 people or 50 people, you're saying I still need to invest a substantial portion of my day or week on recruiting and talent.
Yes.
It's one of my biggest jobs.
It's one of your biggest jobs, yeah.
Got it.
And in my mind, the 3 biggest ones are setting the vision, working on the recruiting, talent management side, and then you're basically the product leader. If you are the founder, who is also the product leader for the company.
You make it sound easy.
It is not.
Oh, and then there's cash, right? Making sure we actually have oxygen to live to fight another day.
Yeah.
Got it. So let's assume I've remedied that because I'm a learning animal. Was it learning animal?
Learning animal.
And I've learned from you to spend 1/3 of my time on this stuff. So now let's move to the second one, which is I rush through the process mindlessly. Let's drill down into some specifics. You described what might be the wrong way to go about this, which is spamming out 100 emails and hiring some product manager. Let's talk about the right way to do it. What are some best practices that you've observed when you think about the 1 or 2 CEOs that you work with that are just rock stars when it comes to recruiting? What is it they do differently? What can we learn from them?
Yeah, so a few things. They have a very high bar on people. and they're very diligent. Like every person, that comes through their way, or they source from somewhere, they follow a proper checklist. Talking to a lot of individuals that person worked with before, figuring out what that person's reputation is. It's one thing, like it's a lot about like being diligent. Second thing is they talk to a few other mentors of theirs who have built companies, and they're probably 1-2 steps ahead of them in terms of the size of the organization that they run and manage.
Yeah.
Just to learn from their mistakes, because you can basically like avoid other people's mistakes.
Yeah.
If you hear about them. Third thing is, especially here in Silicon Valley, there are a lot of excellent professional services folks who specialize on organization design, as well as recruiting of specific type of individuals.
Yep.
And these are folks who know very well, about who's on the market, how your org chart is going to look like 6 months down the road, how your chart is going to look like 12 months down the road. So
Yep.
we do these three, like simple things.
Yep.
Basically, just follow a process.
So,
Save
and
yourself from 80% of the mistakes you're going to make.
would you say that is missing in many startups? There's no process.
There's no process.
Got it. So this is really,
You don't know better.
yeah. It's your first time, right?
And the other thing is, you're not going to pay for your mistake the day after you recruited someone. Take some time.
Yeah.
To realize that you made a mistake.
I'm sure you've spent many a board meeting talking about a bad VP of sales hire, a bad CFO hire. So let's talk about that, because mishires do happen, bad hires do happen. How long do you wait? When do you advise the CEO to make a change? Again, I know every situation varies, but how do you begin to think about that process?
Yeah, so the first one is, like after the honeymoon period, if you start, seeing that everything that person promised is not happening.
Yep.
That's one sign. Second thing is, if people who work with that person still, do not trust that person, and in other words, she or he hasn't earned the respect, of the team. Third thing is, depends how much time you have, because if it's a very critical hire that you brought on board, to work on a specific project, and if that person, leaves, you cannot, pull off, your next product release or the next, big PR marketing gig that you have to do.
Yeah.
Maybe, like a total disaster,
Yeah.
to let him or her go. And thirdly, you always want to have an alternative, because unless that person is, totally toxic for the culture, you only, upgrade if you have something better in mind.
Right, got it. But if they're
this sequence of events, happens, pretty quickly, within a month.
Yeah. But if they're toxic, if they're cancer, they have to go immediately.
Immediately.
No questions.
Immediately, because a lot of the other employees get massively, disincentivized, and they're they don't feel good.
Yeah. We're operating in this environment of, right now, when this is filmed, about 5% unemployment, which is just about zero unemployment of white-collar professionals with educations. What are some of the creative things that you've seen your portfolio companies do to win this war for talent? Because it's essentially what we're in, right? Are there any lessons learned in terms of just getting people interested? Because you run a 10-person company, no one's heard of it before, you're competing with Google and Facebook. How can you get people enticed, other than just paying a lot?
Yeah, a few things. There are individuals who are amazing in community building, amazing, time and time again. So whenever, they're getting married, or there is a sports game, or they're organizing a surprise party for a friend of theirs who is an engineer, they always, try their best to include others, who would be potentially, folks that could join, their team. I see these again and again.
So it's just so I'm clear, they invite prospective candidates, but not to an interview. It's more to a social event or something else.
Yeah.
They'll say, I don't know you, but my brother's getting married. We'd love for you to come.
Yeah, and it's amazing in a way to actually get to know somebody a little bit, and have a number of others, interact with that person, and also, have them serve you as a bit as a filter.
Yeah,
so that's one thing. Second thing is a number of individuals are unbelievable in building relationships, and you've probably come across these individuals in your life, and these are people who start accumulating social capital with others over the years,
yeah.
and when there is the time to pull some favors and spend it, they do it.
Got it.
And these are the people who normally track down the smartest folks that they work with, and when they come here and pitch me, I ask them, hey, do you know who the next 3 engineers? They're like, yeah, I have plenty of lists from people I worked with before and before.
And then what do? Do you go out of your way to meet those people ahead of time? So you're building as a VC, but we should do the same as entrepreneurs, building a bench of talent that we can draw upon when the time comes, versus just-in-time hiring, which is scrambling and sending out emails on LinkedIn.
Yes, exactly. So and I've come across SaaS entrepreneurs who are very thoughtful about it, especially since you don't make a decision overnight to start a company. Probably plan ahead. Third thing is there are a ton of tools now around recruiting that at some moments in time they give you an edge. AngelList is working very nicely for a lot of companies now. There are a bunch of other tools that are helping you essentially turn every single employee of yours as a recruiter, and you can easily leverage them for referrals.
Right.
And frankly that's how most startups in the very early days grow.
Sure.
Each new employee brings a friend of his or hers.
Most of your portfolio companies pay an employee referral bonus?
Most of them do. Yes.
I mean, is it sizable, or what is there a market rate that you typically see?
It's like $5,000 to $10,000.
That's very significant.
It is sizable.
Wow. When I was growing up, it was like $50 or a Starbucks gift card. Now it's $10,000. But
sometimes you can get stock options. So.
Yeah, but still a lot less than an executive recruiter.
That's right. And then like some of the other stuff you could do is creative hacks, like really creative hacks. Some companies leverage PR for recruiting, and this can work really well, especially if you're in the hot like space of the moment.
Yeah, got it. In the couple minutes remaining, let's switch to one last topic that I get asked about a lot, which is a difficult situation where we're hiring a relatively senior person. I put candidates in front of my board members or my VCs, you in this case, and we don't agree. So there's 2 finalists for CFO or vice president of sales. I think candidate A is the right person. You think candidate B. As the founder, entrepreneur, how do I think about how hard to push, when I should own the decision, when I should defer to my board, even though I don't agree? How do I think about that?
Yeah, that's what I mentioned before. You need to have a process in place, and a process that you agree upon when you basically decided to look for a VP of sales, and you have like all the items on the checklist. So if for example, it's a matter of I'm unsure about this person's ability to lead a sales team, you can basically go back to all the references the person had, and basically use some quotes from there. So that's why running a process is very, very important.
But let's say we do all that, and at the end of the day, because obviously this is subjective, I think candidates A's experience and DNA makes sense, but you've heard amazing things about him from VCs that you trust. How do I reconcile that? What do I do?
So at the end, like my position would be, I would trust the entrepreneur's gut, because she or he is going to be working with that individual 24/7, and at least like in the first few years when there is no evidence that this person is not a good recruiter or doesn't have an ability to retain my position would be, I'll give you my advice,
but then defer to the entrepreneur.
But I will defer to the entrepreneur.
Out of curiosity, do you find that most VCs see the world that way, or do some VCs say that if an entrepreneur picks his choice or her choice over mine, and it turns out to be wrong, I'm going to bust his chops about it every day?
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if it's what you described. I wouldn't be surprised.
Got it. So it sounds like really the only path is to have a very heartfelt discussion with my VC about how we're going to make this decision.
Yes.
Right? Even before as you described, as part of the process.
That's right.
What happens if we get to two finalists and we don't agree? Is there a tiebreaker? Are you going to defer to me?
Exactly.
Are you going to bust my chops if I'm wrong? Like, almost discuss that up front.
Spend your time, discussing about process, and if you agree on it, probably 80% of the time you're going to be right.
Yeah.
And then become really good about letting go of people.
Got it. Which is never.
You build a machine.
Yeah.
Like when you build the machine, there is a lot less room for gut feelings.
Is there anything that you read or study to learn about this, or is it just firsthand experience?
Mostly learning from people.
Got it. Okay.
But I've been very fortunate to have access to unbelievable people.
It sounds like it. Well, congratulations on your success at General Catalyst. Niko,
early days, no return.
Niko, how can people get in touch with you or learn more about General Catalyst Partners, the VC fund, etc.?
Yeah, so they can send me an email at niko@generalcatalyst.com. I'm active on social media, LinkedIn and Twitter. Best way to learn about us is from our founders.
Great.
So we have a portfolio of about 100 active, companies, and they're there, to tell our story or, say, good and bad things about us.
Good. Well, I very much appreciate the time. We learned a lot.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, Niko.